Hello. A few people have emailed me and asked me to do a detailed startup of the Aero Commander 520. So I thought I'd show you how we do that, or how I do that. The checklist I use is my own little hybrid version of the one printed in the Pilot's Operating Handbook, POH, and what I've come to conclude myself. You know, what makes most sense for my type of flying. So let's go through it. So control locks removed, and you check that, you check everything is free in full movement. Gear is locked, master switch goes on. And I already keep my generators on. In the POH, it says to keep them off as you start up and then turn them on once the engine starts. But I've spoken to a lot of people with lots of experience and they say you don't need to do that. So they're just always on, so I never forget. Next item is hydraulic pressure, and the hydraulic pressure on these runs everything, including the gear, the brakes, the steering. On the Aero Commander, on these old Aero Commanders, there are no squat switches to tell the system if the plane's on the ground. So the only way to keep the gear locked down is to physically stop the lever from being able to move up. If you move this safety aside, you can now move the gear up, but that will collapse the gear on the ground. So it's very important to keep the gear lock on at all times when you're on the ground. So when you start an engine, you do not have any braking power yet unless you have hydraulic pressure. So that's why we pump up manually the hydraulic pressure until you can kind of feel that the toe brakes are starting to give you a bit of resistance. And there's also a hydraulic pressure meter here, and it should go up to about 500 psi. I normally just give it a little bit of a, you can feel when the brakes are starting to grab, you know. Parking brake is off. There is a parking brake down here. I never use it. So this is probably something I'm going to remove on the next iteration of the checklist because it's never on. Gear light, green. That means it's safe. Flap control is up. Also, when the plane's been sitting for a little while and the hydraulic pressure drops through the system, the flaps will come down. So the flaps will default to down without pressure because the only thing that keeps them up is hydraulic pressure. It's very important that the flaps be put in the up position when you start up, so the flaps retract again. Props are fully forward. Mixture is rich. Now mixture, and normally when you start them, you just bring it up slightly above the idle cutoff. Now this is full rich, so this is where you'll be flying with them because these are pressurized carburetors that also compensate for the barometric pressure. So your aircraft, this particular aircraft, you never have to lean. The only time you lean it is on the ground, just to have it run a little bit better. So basically you keep it here and then you just bring that up to above idle cutoff and it'll start. Fuel valve open. This is essential, by the way, because the fuel valves are closed on this. This is to prevent fire. Next thing on the list is carb heat, and they're down here, and I live in California, so we don't use that very much here. But it happens, sometimes you need to use them. I've used them once or twice since I bought the plane in 2 years. Rotating beacon is always on, so I never forget. Circuit breakers. There are circuit breakers on 3 places. One here is on the panel, one's to the left, here on the sidewall by the cockpit, or by the captain's side, and the rest are up here. And generally, these deal with instruments, these deal with basic systems, and these deal with avionics, or a mix of basic systems and avionics. Next thing to check is fuel quantity, and there's no way of doing that manually on this aircraft. You just have to trust the gauge. Okay, let's get this baby started. So we always start with the left engine because the left engine has the one hydraulic pump which will power up the brakes. Very important. And the flaps and the gears and everything. So we always start with the left engine. And the way we do that is put the booster pump on, not booster pump, the booster pump on, And then we prime for about 5 seconds. Or you can look, you can see if it starts dripping fuel from the carburetor. That's when you know it's oversaturated. So that's probably enough. Then you pump twice on the throttle and just leave it a little bit of a crack open like that. You put the magneto in the left position, and as she fires, you take the mixture out of the detent and give the engine some fuel. So let's try that. Clear. She was a little bit reluctant, but that went fine. We have oil pressure in that engine, and the fuel booster can now be turned off again until we only turn it back on when we go for takeoff. We do the same thing on the left engine. Count to 5. 1, 3, 4, 5. Crack the throttle up twice, pump it, and then crack it open. Mag in the left position, and here we go. Mags to both positions. Fuel booster can now come off. Good. Engines. Oil pressure is coming up. I can feel I have pressure in my toes for the brakes. And the flaps have come up now as well. Now that the pressure's been restored, the flaps go up into the wing again. So it's very good. We have suction, we have hydraulic pressure, we have fuel pressure. Everything's good. That's it. Easy.